We are entering, without hyperbole, the biggest summer in the history of Nebraska football. Let's talk about it, because we've seen the headlines over the past couple months that the Huskers are going to win 8-9 games, be in the mix for the Big Ten title. Dylan Raiola is going to be in the mix for the Heisman race, that Matt Rhule is going to completely turn over this program. But will it actually happen? Will the Huskers actually live up to expectations? Well, it all starts now, not only in preparation, game planning, training, but in recruiting, roster management, and the transfer portal as well. So in today's video, I'm going to forecast what's going to go on over the next couple weeks, over the next couple months, what you can expect in May, June, and July for this Nebraska football program, and why it's so important for a huge season this year. So really quick, we have a lot to get into. Hit that like button if you're fired up. Honest conversation. You're going to want to watch the entire thing. And really quick, if you support the channel, it takes 2 seconds. It really helps me out. Please hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much. But without further ado, let's get into it, talking about why I believe this is the biggest summer in the history of Nebraska football. And I know right off the bat, I'm going to get some people who comment and they say, Wilson, this is not the biggest summer in the history of Nebraska football. Just 30 years ago, we were competing for national titles. Yeah, that's true. We were very good 30 years ago. But we weren't rebuilding a program 3 years ago. We were constantly successful. It wasn't that hard to go into the 1995 season and be good because we already had a bunch of talent. Okay. Tom Osborne's job was pretty easy at that point in time compared to what it was 20 years ago when he took over. Okay. Compare that to right now, however. Nebraska is rebuilding. We haven't been in the mix for a national title in 30 years. And for the first time in a long time, we have a glimmer of hope. We have an opportunity on our hands to make that big jump, to get back into national relevancy. That's why it's the most important summer of my lifetime, but potentially of yours as well. So let's talk about what is Nebraska going to do over the next couple of weeks, over the next couple of months that you need to watch out for. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the big one, and this is recruiting. Okay, and we'll talk about game planning as the video progresses, so stick around for that. We'll talk about the portal as the video progresses. But recruiting is so important for Nebraska, particularly this offseason, because recruiting is changing forever. Okay, for the first time, with the roster limit set to be in place, Nebraska's taking very small classes. Okay, they're only taking about 15 to 20 guys per recruiting class. They're being very selective. They have no room for error because every single guy they take nowadays has got to come in here and compete right away. They've got to be blue chip talents. They've got to be basically 4 stars. Gone are the days of you taking a high upside player who you're not going to see for 3 to 4 years. That's not in the cards anymore for Nebraska. Maybe for schools like Iowa State, there's the reason why Nebraska isn't offering all these kids in the state. Because guys like maybe a Marion Jackson, they don't think he can play right away. They don't think he's going to play in the first 4 years. So they don't see a role for him on this team. So first off, Nebraska is being very selective with recruiting. They've got to hit on basically everybody they're going after. And talking about the offensive line, I think the offensive line is the most important position for Nebraska in the 2026 class. They're going after some really good guys. Calvin Obot, who was recently bumped up to a 5-star prospect according to On3. Nebraska right now probably second in his recruiting process. Only second to, I'd say, USC. So you got to land him. You got to land Deacon Smith coming out of Colorado. You got Tennessee in there. You got Alabama in there. Some really, really good programs. You got to land Ryan Murat, okay, coming out of Miami. You got Miami and Ole Miss in there as well. So Nebraska's going after some really good offensive linemen. You've got to lock that down. You've got to continue to get better on the offensive line every single year, and that starts with getting blue chip offensive line prospects. So that's the most important position group for the Huskers. D-line in that very same grain. This is a big defensive line class for more than one reason. Number one, you always want to get great defensive linemen. But number two, Terry Bryant has a lot to prove from a recruiting standpoint. Okay, he's coming in from the Kansas City Chiefs. He's never recruited before. I'm worried that this class for Nebraska on the defensive line will not be very good. Titan Davis has an opportunity to change that, right? He's Chase Young 2.0. He looks like Chase Young. He plays like Chase Young. 6'5", 240 pounds. Nebraska probably runner-up right now besides Bama, but according to some insiders, they were the favorite. You got to land him. Valdon Sony, somebody who Nebraska has a really good chance with, right? You got Oklahoma, you got Florida, you got Bama. Nebraska's trying to push for an official visit. He's a borderline 5-star guy. So there are some potential players that Nebraska could land at the defensive line, but Terry Brown's really got to prove that he's a good recruiter. And then I'm looking out for the defensive backs. The reason why the DBs are so important is because we're going to see a lot of turnover after this season. A lot of DBs are going to leave this program. Okay, so you got to land a bunch of guys who come in here and compete right away. Devin Jackson is one of those guys. Cameron Hamel is one of those guys Nebraska just made his top 4. So again, I'm looking out for those type of names. And then last but not least, right, Jordan Campbell, right? Hopefully you can flip him away from Miami. That's a 4-star linebacker. Not sure why they say he's unranked. He's top 100 in the country. And then Ja'Cory Smith, also a 4-star linebacker. So those are the most important positions Nebraska needs to get in this class. Offensive line, DB, D-line, and linebacker. But also the exact same grain. This is when all the guys commit nowadays. Okay, gone are the days people committing in signing day. They're all going to commit this summer. That's when recruiting is a hotbed. That's when everybody commits. They want to get their spot before the transfer portal opens up. So that's the first thing I'm looking out for. Nebraska needs to secure a legit top 15, top 10 class, and they need to get pretty much all those guys we just mentioned. Then, second thing, the transfer portal is going to be very interesting for Nebraska this year. They're going to bring in some guys, okay? And I think I'd already told you guys what I believe Nebraska's philosophy is going to be. They're going to be very selective, okay? They're not going to go after a guy and give him a bunch of money. They're going to be very selective, but I told you guys they're going to be patient, and I expect them to take a running back, potentially a defensive lineman, and a punter for sure. Those are the three positions I expect Nebraska to land because they know they need a running back. They wanted Shamar Brown badly. They didn't get him because they weren't willing to put up what Miami was putting up money-wise. Cool. There's a bunch of fish in the sea. Okay, and Nebraska might get a JUCO. They might get a D2 guy. They might get an FCS guy. You never know when a grad transfer is going to enter. Okay, Nebraska landed Sear Wright in June of last year? So I expect Nebraska to take a running back. I expect Nebraska to potentially take a defensive lineman. I expect them to take a punter as well. Obviously, you need a starting punter. Nebraska's not going to shy away from taking guys to take guys because they want to add competition to this team. So I expect Nebraska to continue to add competition in the portal. That's the second thing that I'm looking out for and why it's very important they address that because Matt Rhule said over and over again he will not shy away from competition. And then number 3, this is arguably the biggest thing that I'm looking out for Nebraska this summer and why I believe this is the most important summer in the history of Nebraska football, game planning. Because we have learned this as Nebraska football fans. Doesn't matter how much talent you have. Doesn't matter what the spread is. Doesn't matter how big of a name your head coach is. If you show up on game day and you play Illinois or Minnesota, you're not ready to go, you don't have a great game plan, you're not locked in, you're going to get embarrassed on national television every single time because this is the Big Ten. The Big Ten's tough. So as Nebraska fans, we've learned in the Scott Frost era, Mike Riley era, in the Matt Rhule era, that game playing is very important. And unfortunately for Matt Rhule, and let's have a conversation about this, Matt Rhule's game planning has been pretty subpar since he got to Lincoln. And that's been disappointing to a lot of fans. He's lost a lot of games he probably shouldn't have lost. Okay, we shouldn't have lost the Iowa game last year. Poor game planning, specifically on the offense side of the football. We should not have lost the UCLA game last year. That was a bad team that came into Lincoln. We should have not lost the Wisconsin game from 2023. We should have not lost the Maryland game from 2023. There were a lot of ball games in the first 2 years of Matt Rhule's tenure that he lost because of his in-game decisions, his time management, and honestly, a lot of play calling issues that weren't his fault, but that was his staff's fault. That changes this offseason. Okay, Matt Rhule has understood that he's not a great game manager. He's admitted to it. That's why he's brought in guys like Dana Holgorsen. That's why he's brought in guys like Phil Snow. That's why he's preached situational football in spring practice. Okay. So gone are the days of Nebraska getting nervous in the fourth quarter when it's a tie ball game and losing by 1 score. That's not happening anymore. Because with Matt Rhule's focusing on this summer and in spring ball and fall ball, he's focused on being comfortable in the uncomfortable situations. Okay, when the game gets tight, how can I feel more comfortable? How can I be even more fine in that situation and thrive? Because that's what the best teams do. When the game gets tight, they believe in themselves. They have confidence. They stick to the game plan. The coaches continue to go with the script and they win. Nebraska has not done that in the last 5 to 10 seasons. That's what changes this summer because the game planning all starts now. We're getting ready for Cincinnati right now. We're getting ready for Akron right now. We're getting ready for Michigan right now. We're looking over the tape. We're getting ready for the play calls. That starts this summer. Matt Rhule's going to be in a way better position than what he was in the first 2 years. Dana Holgorsen is going to help out with that. Phil Snow is going to help out with that. I say all that to say this. The game planning is going to be so much better this year. And I feel so much more confident that we're going to win these tight games because of what we're going to do in the months of May, June, and July behind the scenes that we can't track, that we won't be able to see until the year. Okay. I want Nebraska to be like Iowa. I'm not going to lie to you. Because what Iowa always does is they overperform compared to the amount of talent they have. Because they're very disciplined, they have great coaches, and they game plan at a high level. I want Nebraska to be like Iowa in that regard. I do not want Nebraska to be like Nebraska or to be like Ole Miss in the past, where Nebraska in the past or Ole Miss in the past, they have a bunch of talent. They have all the talent in the world, but their coaches aren't great game planners and they lose the big games. They can never win that big game or even the games they should win. Nebraska, this is the only time we'll give Iowa credit. They need to be like Iowa because they need to outperform expectations and they need to win the close games. So this is a big summer for Nebraska for a million reasons. Recruiting portal, game planning, roster management's in there, right, with all the changes going on. But it's a big summer because it's a big season. It's a big summer because there's big expectations. It's a big summer because there is a lot of stuff on the line. Can Nebraska actually live up to these expectations? And they have a good year. We will see, but it all starts now. All right, guys, let me know your thoughts down below. What are you looking over in the next couple months from May, June, July? And make sure to subscribe for daily content throughout that span. I know a lot of content creators, it's tough to make Husker football videos in May, June, July. Not over here. We post every single day, so make sure to subscribe for the latest and also hit that like button if you made this far in the video. All right, guys, go Matt Rhule. Go Big Red. See you in the next one.